Hello everybody, welcome to Discussing Tabletop for July 29th, 2017. We're episode 39. I hope everyone is having a great day. It's a pretty nice day here for me, and it looks like everybody's having a fine Saturday to begin with. Why don't we dive right into the show, of course. Today with us we have my co-host Joe and our guest with us, Rob. So,
hi.
But today's topics will of course be... we're gonna do the. I'm getting a little bit echo again.
I don't know why.
Yeah. Okay. There it goes. We got the Pathfinder Ironfang Adventures. I want to talk about the adventure path as a whole because it just finished. Just discuss it a little bit. I do want to talk about the new board game Train Heist, which is a cooperative board game about being like cowboys / outlaws. I want to talk about playing classic RPGs, because that seems to be a topic that we've talked about classic RPGs, more or less classic editions, but what would it be to go back and play them kind of thing. I want to talk about doing that. I do want to talk about a little bit of how D&D has changed through the editions also as a kind of follow-up to that, because... Again, we've talked about older editions of Dungeons & Dragons, but most people know 5th. And finally, the last thing I kind of wanted to talk about, which I kind of came up with, was a little earlier today. Don't go under there. That's really bad. Don't be over there. She's trying to crawl around where the computer is, so please...
We're going to talk about not going under there.
Don't crawl next to the computer. What's up? And the final topic was... James wants you to say hi, Joe.
Oh, yes.
The final topic I wanted was to talk about some classic RPGs that we liked that maybe we want to see either the system come back in general or like a new edition of it. Either or would be interesting. So why don't we dive into the first topic? I did want to at least talk a little bit about the Ironfang Invasion adventure path because it just did finish up. Joe, can you lead this for a second? Because
I will try, because I know nothing about the adventure path, really.
Just try. Okay. Let me intro it, and then I'll let you discuss it for a little bit while I take care of distraction.
Yes.
Stream knees. So, a Pathfinder likes to do their adventure paths, which are 6 adventure series that are connected together, same storyline. They're pretty interesting. This one, I think, gets you up to much higher level than at some of them, because I know I was looking at the last one, and the last one ends up at 16th level you start out as, and most of these start at, like, 13th or 14th level, it seems like, when you're getting into the last adventure. So I do like that you're at a higher level. That's cool. And it's all about a legion of hobgoblins. Pop-Pop's home. Go bother him. He's outside on the porch. Quickly go. He misses you. Anyway, basically are evading a region and trying to take it over, and your job is to eventually stop them and defeat them. So, and you end up in like a place, like you go to other planes too, which is kind of cool, because you end up on the plane of Earth, where their like citadel is, apparently.
Of course, hobgoblins are from Earth.
That's funny.
I can find you. I can hear you, but I can't see you.
Mm-hmm. Can you get out from under there?
Come on out from under the table, sweetie.
Anyway, I don't know what I'm saying anymore. I'm getting distracted way too much.
Hobgoblins are from Earth.
Yes.
You're awful cute, Dad.
Female hobgoblins are from Venus.
Awful
Yes.
cute.
I would like. Come on, Roy. Yes, quickly, hurry up. There we go. Okay, Joe, lead stuff. Second.
I am leading stuff. Second. So the ones that have already been out looks like Trial of the Hunted, Fangs of War, Assault on Long Shadow, Siege of Stone, Prisoners of Blight, and the final one in the series is going to be The Vault of the Onyx Citadel. Let's see. With this one, with an army of their own, the heroes finally wage war against Ironfang Legion and the cinematic conclusion of the Ironfang Invasion.
Okay, so...
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. I missed what you were saying. Were you just, like,
I
reading...
I was talking about the Vault of the Onyx Citadel as the last one, and I was reading the snippet.
Oh, you read the snippet. Yeah, I mean, they, like, have their own doomsday weapon or something, which is kind of cliche, but I guess they're usually a lot like this. That's the only thing I have to say about the adventure paths, is they usually end up being pretty epic. It doesn't seem all of them, but they do seem that way, most of them, you know, that there's some kind of threat that'll destroy everything or be terrible if it comes back or something. I mean, I guess...
Well, you have to have some kind of ultimate battle.
I guess if it's 6 adventures, you want something that really top-heavy...
You don't want to just be like, and you snipered the king of the goblins, and congratulations.
Yeah,
After 6 adventures, that would be kind of like, oh, well, yay?
Well, I mean, like, did the Legion need a doomsday weapon? They're already, like, trying to conquer
the Legion
world.
always needs a doomsday weapon, Matthew.
Are we doing, like...
I don't know. You know, when you're talking about players, what could possibly go wrong by giving them a doomsday weapon?
Of course players are not going to misuse a doomsday weapon.
Woo, doomsday weapon!
You know, just give everyone a deck of many things, and everything will be fine.
Sort itself out very quickly.
It really will. It really, really will.
Congratulations, you're all in another dimension and stone statues.
No, I think the only thing I have to say that I felt was really interesting about this entire adventure path is they have an entire section where you go to this, like, forest and deal with Fae. Which is, I guess, like, oh, we're running, because you run away from the Legion, apparently, to begin with, for, like, 2 adventures before you're like, we can fight back now, you know?
Brave, brave, brave Sir Robin.
So, I mean, it's at least interesting and different than I would have imagined for the entire storyline, that you sort of have to, you have to, like, route yourself, rebuild yourself through a couple of adventures, and then, like, around adventure 4, sort of pop back into there, you know, we're like, oh, now we really have to, like, kind of go against them again. So, I mean, that's cool, but it's also, like, you know, it's... The adventure paths have been a very interesting thing for me, and I feel like I like them in a way, but it's also, like, they are so hard because they put out a lot of them. So it's the question of, like, how could you watch... there's so many to do, you know? And
well, the thing is, adventure paths are great, pre-made adventures in general, but you also have to have a DM who can put their own twist to it.
That's true. The own twist is good, and I do like where pre-made adventures are sort of going to with the current generation. I sort of like... There's some classics I still love. Some AD&D classic adventures. I loved the Eye of Doom series. I think it was the Eye of Doom series. It was like 3 adventures set with a Beholder theme. I can't remember exactly, because I have the middle one, which was really cool because it was exploring a ruined Beholder city, where a hive was trying to take over again. Because I guess we don't really get that in more modern editions. They don't get, like, hives of Beholders as much anymore. And
you don't even see Beholders used as much anymore.
Well, they've made them more challenging and epic, too. Over, like, the 5th edition Beholder is really mean. I mean, like, not to say that the... Yeah, please. Not to say that...
the thing I think you have to remember about in the earlier editions is, you know, there was a lot of save or die type things. So, you know, hey, if you get hit with the Beholder's petrification ray, save and now you're stone. And, you know, unless you're able to, or the disintegration, save and you're a pile of dust. So, you know, those kinds of things, like you get hit with some of the rays in 5th edition, you can conceivably bounce back, where when you were disintegrated before, you're a pile of dust.
Yeah, that's true. They've
Yeah, well, and you got to think that, you know, the challenge, they may seem more epic now, but at the same time, so are the characters.
Yes.
You know, we went from, what's your class? I'm an elf. as my class. You know, and having to roll your stats and then see what class you qualified for to what we have today. Characters are a lot more hardier and there's a lot more options for them.
And I think there's a level of what you're saying to the epic, which I think they've also stepped away from, but still is there. It's a different kind of epic now. I don't feel like the 5th edition, we've taken that step down, that they're not as ridiculous as, let's say, the 3rd edition characters would get. 3rd edition characters, they could abuse the crap out of it and become really powerful. I
think 3rd edition lasted the longest.
Ugh.
I want to feel.
I think AD&D was probably longer, but had the 2 additions to it. It had the
or they at least had the most books.
Yeah.
With that, many books as they had for 3.0 and 3.5.
That's also like a hot debate, because I guess if we include all the campaign settings for normal D&D, it would be different. But if we just talk about the straight books,
I'm talking about books for character creation and tweaking your character.
Right.
Yeah, I get that.
I'm actually going to. I don't know if I agree or disagree with that. I mean, they both. I would say that 2nd edition and 3rd edition were very player-centric heavy in their books, which was actually one of the things that we played 2nd edition for a long time back when it came out, and once it started getting where as the DM you had to have 20 books. Just so that you could reference all the stuff that the players were trying to, pull into the game. I kind of pulled back from it. I thought it was, to me as a DM, it was very apparent going from 1st edition, where all you really needed was 3 books to play the game, to 2nd edition, where you needed 3 books and everybody else needed a set of books. It just became very obvious to me that that somebody at TSR clicked in their mind, like, there's 8 people sitting at this table. How can we sell these 8 people the most amount of books? And it just seemed very obvious to me as like a commercial money grab, more than that it did anything to help enhance the game.
No, but I definitely agree with that statement. That unfortunately, with how role-playing games have evolved, I feel like more books are needed now, and it seems like everyone took that lessons to heart up into the modern day now. Granted, I feel like there are resources now, especially with online, that helps mitigate that to a degree. Like Pathfinder. I feel like everybody should probably have a core book, and after that, the DM needs everything. That's it. Just because the core rulebook is something that the Pathfinder core rulebook has enough stuff in it, I think it's the same way even with the player's guide for the current 5th edition. That's all a player really needs to get themselves started. And then the DM can have everything else. And if there's extra books, they can have it or something, I feel like that's what's needed now. So I feel like...
Yeah, I agree that they've pulled back from that to make the game more accessible to newer players. Yeah. Where, it doesn't... Where, a new player shows up and they've got the 1 book and they're looking at everybody else with 5 or 6, and... these things are expensive, so it's an investment. And if all you really need is just the starter PDF and your character sheet, to get going, I think it makes it more accessible to more people. I think it's also why we've seen a big success in 5th edition.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and also now 5th edition has their online stuff that eventually is going to be a phone app that you can. If you want, you can download entire books, but there's also a lot of free information on there and everything too. So with more invention of technology, it's kind of mitigated, the need for as many books as like 3.5 that you had, where it's like, oh, well, I'm going to pull this one ability from this book and another ability from this book and another ability from this book. And
there's also
you hope that one of your friends had all the books.
Yeah. Well, then there's also the problem that we've evolved past that, but we still have that. Like Pathfinder, getting back to that, has the website, the D20 PSFRD, where it's a reference for like everything. And that's the problem, though. It's everything. So there's so many options buried deep within there.
But the website also is third party.
That's technically third party. Yes, that's true. They did break away from Paizo directly, and they basically publish everything as if it would have been, the standard third party. So that means, like, sometimes when you there is always this need for certain references for books, but it's like it says it's this ability and it's got a different name, and you're like, well, this doesn't seem to be perfect in this entry here. I want to look up the one in the book. What book is it in? Oh, I don't know anymore because the name's different. But
Right.
I mean, I feel it's been an this is like a example of the evolution of the system. I think the adventure path itself. I mean, Paizo has done very interesting by putting that as their bread and butter, the adventure paths, and they are successful, I think, currently. But I also then do have a very good soft spot for 5th edition's current way of looking at adventures, where it's a lot more freeform, you know. Again, though, I would like to see at least some kind of, like, what was it? It wasn't Tomb. It was, oh God, I'm trying to think of it. The compilation of adventures that was the classic ones.
Oh,
I would like where it's probably just like it's basic upgrades to 5th edition. I mean, if you're doing 5th edition, I would like that. But plus, you know, that's cool. I mean, also like because they are putting out PDFs like of some of the classics too.
Mm-hmm.
I like that also because maybe that encourages people to try like some of the earlier editions where things came from.
Yeah, I like it too. I recently converted when I started my campaign was converted S1, The Secret of Saltmarsh, which, you know, I'm not going to spoil it for anybody who hasn't played it, but it's essentially a Scooby-Doo adventure. But it was I spent a lot more time converting it than I expected it to take. Because there were some things that were just ridiculously overpowered that the characters were coming up against, just in either numbers, and then there were other things that were not a challenge at all. So it was kind of hard just figuring out the balance on my own. So I like the idea of, you know, somebody else kind of doing that work for me. And then, you know, I can just kind of roll into a classic adventure that we know and we can kind of enjoy the flavor of it.
Yeah.
I would say the weirdest game that I was ever in, ended up being a lot of fun, but we had someone who was very insistent on trying to incorporate certain things from 2nd edition into a 3.5 game. So we ended up playing like a 2nd edition / 3.5 version of D&D, which was
2.75.
Really, yes, yeah, there you go. It was really interesting because I personally never liked THAC0. I'm like, no THAC0. No 2-hit armor class. I don't want that. I'm like, I'm fine with other stuff from 2nd edition. Let's not do the armor class.
I mean, you can understand where they were going with armor class too, but it did get confusing when things would go into negatives. I think was the problem, a little bit. It required more math, you know. Oh, and I found the book because I'm stupid and forgot it. It's Tales of the Yawning Portal.
Oh yes.
Where I mean, we could always go to the Tomb of Horrors in 5th edition.
Everyone loves a good Tomb of Horror.
Well, I really kind of want to get this book though because I do want to play it against the Giants because I never had a chance to in 2nd edition, and I you know, just doing it in 5th might be good enough for me. So, but yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that's a good way of kind of putting it off here. That it's interesting to look at where adventures, at least published ones, have gone and where it's leading to today with the adventure paths and such, and what D&D is doing. But why don't we get to our next topic, because we'll definitely be talking about some of the classics a little more today. I did want to talk about a new board game before we moved on to more role-playing game talk, just because this one I thought was really cool, and I didn't even notice now. It looks like you're like Western Critters on this one.
Yes.
Wow. It's Train Heist, a cooperative board game where you're basically robbing trains for the right reasons. You're Robin Hood as cowboys, because the corrupt sheriff and rich folks stealing the people's earnings, you know. And it's free range, so basically you have a lot of options of like what you want to do in the board game. I guess whether going after certain trains and stuff like that. So there's options of what you want to do to try to overthrow the sheriff and the rich people. And it's got like a special kind of poker deck that you can use for cards. And you loot trains, race your horses, grab stuff, earn reputation, use special abilities, all the kind of basic stuff. And it's cooperative, so, I mean...
You use your poker cards to loot or perform special actions.
Yes. That's kind of cool. And it's got train car minis. That doesn't seem like something you actually need, but I like the idea of little minis. It's, you know, little extras I like about games like this, too.
And cowboy meeple.
Yes, the cowboy little people. Yep. No, this is a cool... I like this game as an idea. Because, I mean, I like a good cooperative board game, for one thing. It's definitely something that's been really fun to get a chance to play. This was a successful Kickstarter, too. Which is always glad. I'm always glad when one of these comes to it. It looks like you get a pretty good amount for like. It looks like you get it for like around $30, so that's actually not a bad price either. So,
No.
And yeah, I think that's. Go ahead.
It slightly reminds me of a game that I've heard you talk about, which was another train rob game that you had to, but you were going through the train itself.
Oh yeah, the bandit one where you're stealing, that one you're trying to steal gold and you're kind of competing against each other.
Right. But that was the first thing that came to mind because you talked about that one in the past.
Oh yeah, that's true.
How long does it take to run through one of these games?
Let's see what they say about the amount of time. They say it's 45 to 60 minutes.
That's a good amount of time too. So.
You can play technically 2 to 4 players. They think it's 3 or 4 or better. You know, as usual, these games can play at certain points, but have preferred numbers.
Right.
So. Oh. But no, I mean, it's definitely an interesting interesting little game that I personally would like to try it. So, I mean,
yeah, it looks fun.
Yeah. And the fact that it's Western Robin Hood is a little interesting too. I mean, a lot of Western games don't tend to be co-op too, I've noticed. You know.
No, normally you're trying to beat the crap out of each other.
Well, it's like gunfights, or you're all robbing different trains, or your game, it's like a bar fight, you know, kind of thing, where you may or may not be shooting each other. Like one where you're a cooperative game for Westerns, it's different, and that's a good thing. And we don't have enough Western games. I don't know. I guess I've said my piece about it. I just wanted to talk about it a little bit. I don't know if either of you want to add anything about it.
Ooh, the meeple can sit on the horse, meeple.
That's always an advantage. That's always an advantage. Those little pieces do look neat.
Oh, and they're working on glow-in-the-dark plastic ones.
I don't know if you necessarily need that, but okay.
Why not?
That's accurate statement. Why not? Mm-hmm. Okay. So I just wanted to briefly go over that. Why don't we move on though to our next topic? Just because we just want to move along. This is an interesting topic I want to talk about because we talk about playing older editions, but what does it mean to go back and play an old edition? Because the fact is, like, for those of us that have encountered things, like, I did a little first edition, I mainly did some second edition, then I ran third edition, was the first time I DM'd, played a little fourth, played fifth. I've had all the D&Ds. Another example would be something like Shadowrun. I've technically played 4 editions of Shadowrun, and I've read through 5th edition.
Mm-hmm.
And I could see how, like, there's certain things I like about some of them. I don't know why that goes up occasionally. And the evolution of them, that's interesting. That we definitely take like the game from where it's at, and you can see, like, generally speaking, again, I can see the evolution of it. But when I say, like, oh, maybe I want to go back, like, certain editions I would say would be interesting to play again for various reasons. Like, 2nd edition, it'd be interesting to play because maybe I don't want to convert one of the many adventures, and they have a plethora of adventures. Or maybe I want to play in, like, Dark Sun or something, which they don't have the same material for. Also, like, for example, when I'm talking about Shadowrun, I don't know if I go back and play earlier editions of Shadowrun, though, truthfully. They're like, 1st edition was pretty okay, but they, like, got pretty complex there in the middle. Like, 4th edition fixed a lot of the problems that it had in complexity. Even so, like, 5th edition is still just as complex as 4th edition. There's very little changes between the two of those, you know? I guess that's like talking also 3.0, 3.5, and 1st and 2nd editions of AD&D, things like that too. But
yeah, I mean, I think it depends on how much the game has changed. Like, you know, like Vampire or Mage or any of those. I rather play the ones I played back in high school than the more modern day version of it after the world got destroyed and they remade it.
They separated those.
But then they now they separated them out and everything. But I'm just saying, when they had gotten rid of the original one originally, I'd much rather still have played the original one.
Yeah, they introduced Requiem. But, like, yes, and now for that one, I almost kind of feel like that's a good example of an interesting way of bringing back something, because they did the 20th anniversary, which was basically a simple I guess there's a little bit more to it, but it's a rehash of the revised rules of Vampire. And they are planning, I think, a 5th edition, they're calling it, or something that they're working on, which I have no idea how they're going to change it. A D10 system's way too simple for, like, major upgrades. I have no idea what they're going to do.
Right. But, you know, when it comes to, like, D&D, I'd play, like, maybe an adventure of original D&D, of AD&D. But I don't think I could see doing a whole campaign of it.
Mm.
Well, and I thoroughly disagree.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to say is that I'm probably a lot older than you are. So, you know, when I started playing, you know, the first time I played was, and I brought my props along here. First time I started playing was with this bad boy. I was about 9 or 10 years old. Had no idea what I was doing. They just told me just to roll the dice when I needed to roll the dice, but I was hooked.
Yes.
And I'm currently running a 5th edition campaign, but we're talking after we do that, we're actually going to go back and do a 1st edition. You know, we're going to run with the old, you know, purple box here with the dragon, the sorceress on the front. I mean, this is some pretty cheesy, but it's great art. It's very evocative.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's something about the old art that, like, I do love how the art for D&D has evolved over the years, and like how Wizards have taken the art. But I also, like, there is just something about the classics too. I mean, it's the original. I guess that's what it is. It's
what I'm looking for, at least out of running basic D&D, is that the rules are so non-existent that the game can be very free-flowing in what you want to do. Now, I will agree with something that Joe said earlier about, you know, your class being an elf is a little bit silly. But you know, we're just going to roll with what we've been given. I think one of the other things about the older versions of D&D these days is that if you want to go back and play them, that, you know, it doesn't have to be an investment where you spend $120 or whatever it is to buy one of these old white box sets.
Yeah.
You know, you can use like the Swords and Wizardry or the Dungeon Crawl Classics. You know, you can get, I think the Swords and Wizardry, you can get, you know, new online. The Dungeon Crawl Classics, you can buy one of the books at your, you know, local game shop for, you know, 25 or $30 to get started with that. And in basic edition, you can go with Labyrinth Lord. You know, that's kind of the Tom Moldavay edition. And then if you wanted to play first edition, you know, instead of having to buy all those books, you could just get Osric. You know, you can download one PDF that has the Player's Handbook, the Dungeon Master's Guide, and the Monster Manual all in one PDF. Or you can even buy the print book for 25 or $30. I mean, it's not, you know, a huge investment to get started.
I think I'm somewhere in
so
between.
even if you just want to go just visit the game for, you know, nostalgia's sake, or if you've never played it before just to see what it is, you don't have to actually spend a lot of money with all the retro clones that have come out.
No, I was going to say, I think I'm sort of in the middle there. It's like, I think, like, if you're revisiting an old campaign, I feel like I would like it more. But, you know, it's like now, it's like my brain, I think nowadays, as I've been, like, running some 5th edition stuff, I think it would be harder for me to dive back into 2nd edition as more, because I probably could dive back into 3rd edition because again, that's where I started DMing. You know, I was really young and didn't really know what was going on, kind of like with 2nd edition for me. You know, that was my time. You know, it was like someone was like, "Here, try this 1st edition," and then I'm like, "Okay," and then after that, it was 2nd edition all after that, because it's. I think my brother got the 1st edition, the black box that TSR put out as a classic during 2nd edition, you know. I think it was like a black starter box that you could try 1st edition, you know. So like,
yeah.
So that's what he first got, and he had me try that, and then he's like, "Okay, we're gonna try 2nd edition now," and like,
well,
that's history.
I think that's part of it too. Is it depends on where you started.
Yes.
I think if you played a lot of original D&D, then going back to it is, that nostalgia feeling. Where, for me, 3.0 and 3.5 is what I really got when I really got into it. I did some 2nd edition, but 3.0 and 3.5 is what I played the most of. So going back to that, to me, it's just like, oh, yeah, I can do that. I know the rules. I could easily slip back into playing that. When it goes, going back to 2nd or AD&D, it's like, I could do it for, the fact that, that's where it came from. It's kind of interesting to go back and do that. But I don't think I could sit through a whole AD&D campaign myself, just because it's a lot more. For me, I think in some ways it's more restrictive, because you have to roll you have to roll all the dice for the characters, see what you can get. You don't have as many choices off the bat, and I'm used to having that.
Well, like, yeah, 1st edition I feel is definitely on that end more restrictive because they have less options for like dice, but they try to like give a lot of options in 2nd edition at least. I mean, and again, it's also up to your dungeon master too. Like, I totally played a 4d6 -1 dice down the line 5th edition game. I played that. I had like a, what was it, like a 5, like 2 5s or something in stats. It was like terrible, but I managed to make it work. I like had to figure out what. It's like, okay, my highest stats are 12. What can I be that can work off of this? Okay.
A commoner.
Well, you could also play it in a realm where, you are, the true everyman.
Yeah.
Who is, going to save their village. I volunteer to save the village, but look at you, you're so scrawny, so I think that it has some role-playing,
yes,
aspects to it that you could play up and enjoy. The other thing that I would say, especially when you're talking like basic or even 1st edition, is that you should probably die.
Yep.
I've been finding it terribly hard to kill my players in 5th edition. Despite some stupid things that they've done. But in first edition, you could be, doing everything as smart as you can, and you could end up dying.
Yep.
And so you just had to be accept that you were going to die.
I think that was,
and I think if you do that and you don't invest so much into your characters, you can enjoy the play of the game that way.
And I agree. You kind of for a good role playing game, you have to have some threat of, hey, you could actually die.
Yes.
Because without that, it's just like, oh, I'm invincible. I'll take on the level 20 boss at level 2.
Mm-hmm.
which I mean,
they're not going to kill me.
I feel like 5th edition, it's a little harder to get that threat, which I can't say it's not. Like, for example, when I only played a one-shot with that character, and I was at 2 failed death saves, 1 successful save, like hanging by a string, when someone managed to make a check and get to me and save me. So I felt on edge. I felt like I could have died there. That's the kind of thing you want to have the feeling of. And
yes,
that was very circumstantial, though, and I feel like, 5th edition, it's a lot harder to get that feeling.
But you also don't want a campaign that you're constantly dying either.
No, I've had those, unfortunately.
We had one of those.
We've had 2 of those. You don't realize that when I did the Carrion Crown Adventure Path, I had a lot of people that were very beginners to Pathfinder and role-playing in general, and they made characters that just died.
Well, yes, but that was partially also player problems too, that they did really, really stupid things, and it didn't think it through, and it's like, oh, wait, I'm dead? Why am I dead? Well, you stepped into the mouth of the dragon.
Or, like, there was a blade barrier. You walked into it, then you went...
and then walked out of it, and then tried to walk back into it.
Yes.
You walked through a blender 3 times. What do you think's gonna happen?
I mean, and so that's, like... When I played Carrion Crown, I think that was also a good wake-up call for me as a GM, because I think that's... Or DMs, both of them, I was always sort of against character death, and when I got that, it was sort of like, okay, I can accept this a little bit, we can move on. I think that's something that my childish dungeon mastering, you need that you need to have character death, that you can't baby your characters.
Right.
Yeah. But you don't want a GM that's actively trying to kill you
every step of the way.
Every step, yeah. Like we had with the one Pathfinder game that I think one person had died like 8 times.
Oh, Lord.
I had the only character that hadn't died in that entire adventure, and because I was a ranged fighter. And that was the only reason I think I survived. And it just stopped being fun, so that's why I stopped it. He had stopped it earlier,
When your whole party has died over and over again, it's like, at some point it's like, okay, why am I still on this adventure? I'm the only one who started this. I have a bunch of random people who just showed up because their DM never really had them, role play out, meeting the new characters. It was just like, oh yeah, Bob the Wizard's here now. Okay.
I think it's also because like the GM was playing up every monster to its maximum potential. It's sort of like
that, and also thought that when you have suggested possible fights,
the random encounters that
encounters that you had to have them in the game, and you had to interrupt everyone's sleep to do it.
Right. Well, I find the whole random encounter thing, regardless of what edition you're playing, to be a little bit, ridiculous. As the game master, I should know a bit about what's going on within the dungeon or the forest or the castle, and these things shouldn't necessarily truly be random. I kind of like the tables that they provide, if they're saying, oh, you're going to run into ogres or whatever in this area. I kind of like, looking at those tables and thinking, yeah, this might be somebody, an ogre might actually be, troop might actually be walking through this area and see your campfire and stumble upon you. That might be something that I want to add to it. But to just kind of roll a dice and just randomly have it happen, I'm a little
Yeah.
iffy on that.
See, that's
Well,
the thing.
for random, yeah. Oh, so go ahead, Matt.
I was gonna say the entire thing for it is I just don't use random encounters anymore. It's more or less like I also do like the 5th edition charts a lot better than I liked the Pathfinder charts, because the Pathfinder charts tend to be all combat encounters on their things. The 5th edition one has just some weird random ones, and I like adding those in all of a sudden. It's like, you know what? Let's break up a little thing here. Let's add a little thing. Like I've been doing Curse of Strahd, and like, you find a grave by the side of the road. It's like there's maybe something weird happens there, and that's it.
Yeah.
You know, there's nothing super dangerous, no deadly. It's kind of weird. Maybe freaks people out a little bit. Call it a day. You know, and I do feel like it's not a bad thing to use those and plan encounters, but then I don't want to use all of them. I think that's the kind of degree is like, I'm backing away from random encounters like our one friend did who did this in the campaign we hated so much, but we're not going to his level. I think he went too far on it.
I think random encounter charts and stuff are good as a reference point. I don't think you need to roll them. I think it's something that if the DM goes, you know, maybe they've been feeding stuff a little too easily. Okay, I'm going to throw a couple extra things in here to make it a little tougher. Or, I think at this point it would make sense for something to, run up across them because of the area or something. I see it more as a useful tool. And they've been making
noise and setting campfires and those kinds of things make them more cautious.
Yeah. Okay. You guys are acting really stupid. You're in the middle of a dangerous forest and you're running around screaming and yelling and whatever. There's going to be a consequence.
Now, I might also do it that, like, if I said, like, I want an encounter here, I might, if they've got a variety of things, roll on the chart at that point in time and sort of like, oh, you're making a lot of noise, you're going to have an encounter. Or I have done it where I've been like, I just sort of like rolled a couple times in the chart and, been like, okay, that's what's going to add it into the adventure today.
Mountain camel.
Well, that was terrible. That was.
I know. It was also late at night. We pressured you into trying to run something, and he threw carnivorous mountain camels at us.
Well, really, I was looking for certain CR things to throw on a chart of random encounters because I wanted random encounters at the time, and 2 camels was equal to whatever else CR I wanted at the time. I don't know.
But it was random carnivorous mountain camels.
Well, I rolled them, and they're like, why are they attacking us? And I'm like, they eat flesh, sure.
They're carnivorous. It's like,
they're mountain camels.
They're like, the camels don't live on mountains. Look, mountain camel.
Look, that was 6 a.m. by the time we got to that point in time. And I had been up like 24 hours. Don't expect gold. Don't expect gold. I
expect gold at all times, sir.
But I guess getting back a little bit to the original topic, because this has sort of been entirely related to it. I feel like there definitely has been an evolution in things, and a lot of things within D&D and any system that I feel like even if you go back to it, you can maybe sometimes use some of these lessons learned, to tweak things that, like, when there's a problem, you have a different way of looking at it to fix some of those problems sometimes.
Right.
And that's not a bad thing.
I'll tell you what I think is still one of the greatest books that even I think during the game was totally useless, which was, not totally useless, but, the original Dungeon Master's Guide with the Ifrit on the cover. There is so much information in this book that it's worth reading no matter what role-playing game you're playing, to kind of come up with, ideas and how to handle encounters, how to handle different terrains and those kinds of things. I think a lot of the systems, the newer systems get bogged down in the details of the different terrains you're in. Well, this will give you ideas of, how to handle, situations that are on the fly. I think it's a fantastic reference book. As far as what, when the edition came out and we used it, there was so much information in it to digest that, pretty much we just flipped to the magic items page and, and started looking at all the cool stuff there.
I think that's one of those things about, like, for me, because at least definitely within D&D, for like all the videos I do on my channel, I've been looking back at some older editions and stuff. And looking at them and reflecting especially on what they talk about when you're coming to DMing/GMing is so interesting, the different things you can learn from them. It's sort of like second edition, even that, which I've been referencing a lot in what I've been looking over, has so much interesting information about different things. And it's sort of like, I feel like it's probably a little complex in places that I think they added in since first, but it's still not like a bad thing, because it talks to like talking about people are hirelings. Okay, like nowadays it'd just be like, okay, you can hire someone on to like help you with certain things. Bam, done. They talked about like, okay, sages. They'd be rare in certain cases. Here's the rules on sages, which makes sense because you don't have books everywhere or libraries they could use. But they don't talk about that kind of thing in the current editions. It's sort of like,
yeah, they don't talk about the thing like, you hire your let's say that you've hired a cart or a caravan to take you someplace. They don't talk about things about like the loyalty of your NPCs and how you treat them.
Yeah.
They've definitely. I think that dealing with a lot of like these different NPCs and hirelings could bog down the game. But certainly in the newer editions, it's a lot of hand waving. Like, you hire an NPC, okay, you're done. And it's just like this action was just taken, kind of instantaneously.
I feel like maybe it doesn't need to be that complex on the PC side. It might be like, okay, you hired them on a PC side, but I feel like the dungeon master, he or she should know that there should be some more going on in the background at least. So it's like maybe the players just think, oh, you hired them on, but secretly this guy, he kind of hates you guys or something, and he's ready to like betray you at the drop of a hat because you kind of were a jerk when you were hiring him or something.
Or he could be actually working for the big baddie.
Yeah, or something like that. That like they might not suspect that you could easily add like essence to it. That people, we don't talk about that unless we're like talking about it like now. They don't reference concepts like this as much. I mean, I guess they want it to be a little more freeform for game masters, but I feel that doesn't help new folks. Like those of us that have game mastered before, we might know some of these things and be ready to sort of throw them out there and all this stuff. But I think that's it's simplicity is both a blessing and a curse, I guess is a great way of saying it.
I'm going to break for about a minute. I'll be right back. Continue talking.
Okay.
Sure.
On the other hand, there's too complex. Like when going back to my Shadowrun entire thing, where like second and third edition Shadowrun trying to use the magic and the hacking systems were like insane. You're like, what am I doing now? And granted, I feel like in a way they're still complex, but they've at least streamlined them that like if I would compare Matrix, Magic, and Combat now in 4th edition, I could probably run them parallel to each other and have it make sense, which is something that I didn't think they had in those earlier editions.
Right.
There were other things that I liked about earlier editions that they did get rid of. Like, I liked trying to get the target numbers, where, like, nowadays it's like you have to get a certain number of successes on your D6s. Before it was, if I rolled a 6, I could roll it again. So there were some crazy numbers of, like, 13s that I'd have to roll, like, 2 6s in a row or something to get,
Yes.
I kind of liked that. I don't know. I guess that's just...
Yeah, what game I think is has done a very interesting job in kind of letting your skills really show through is Savage Worlds. Have you played that at all?
I haven't had a chance to play Savage Worlds.
So I mean, it's very interesting in that you could have an ability, and before you were rolling 1d8 on this ability, and now that you've specialized in whatever it is in it that you're playing. Now you're going to be rolling a 1d10 or a d12 on it.
Yeah.
So, it gave you these, as you got better in things, you still, had these chances for failure, but now you have a much greater chance for having, epic successes as well.
I think that's another reason I kind of also like Earth Dawn's step system a little bit. I think that's a pretty interesting one. I like a little bit.
Yes.
I've only gotten to play Earth Dawn twice, so that's like another one of those ones I would. There's a couple of games I would love to try, and a couple more that I would love to either like play again or something, and that's high on the list. So, also the other ones I want to try, Savage Worlds. I remember that one. Call of Cthulhu and GURPS. Haven't tried
GURPS, Call of Cthulhu, both very good.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of think the first edition of Call of Cthulhu is a little bit unplayable in some ways, just as far as the rules go. But the flavor in the first edition of Call of Cthulhu, especially with a DM who can really kind of, play up the horror and the suspense aspect of it, is fantastic. I mean, it's a really was a breakaway type game from any of the others that we had been playing at that time.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's definitely a wide variety of systems, we can just talk about. And I guess there have been good and bad changes throughout the editions. So, I mean, you can always try the modern one if you're new to games. And if you want to try one of the earlier ones, I kind of almost would say go ahead and see if you like it. Because, like, even second edition, I wouldn't mind actually doing a campaign in second edition, personally. Like, unlike Joe, he's like, I would do a campaign in second edition. First edition, I guess it would be, depends on how my character rolled up. If it was something, like, decent, I'll take a fighter. I can play a fighter. What can I say?
One thing I'd like to say about playing the older RPG editions, and it's something that I've noticed just is that a lot of people my age are now they've kind of had their careers and they've had their families and they're established, that they're looking to get back into the hobbies that they did when they were younger and they enjoyed. So I see a lot of guys in their 40s and in some even in their 50s that are coming back to play Dungeons and Dragons games. So you see a lot of people coming back to play the first editions, the second edition, and I will say is that they've done a nice job on fifth edition to be able to please us old crusty cynical guys to bring us into the fold in that edition. But when I play with a first edition group, for the most part, most people I'm playing with are people who played it when they were playing it in high school or college.
Yes. Okay.
What happened? Where's it come?
It should be started.
It's not. It's.
Give me a second here.
Oh yeah, Disney Junior on demand.
Technical difficulties. Okay. Why don't we... I don't know where Joe went to. He'll hopefully be back. Why don't we move on, though, to the next topic I wanted to handle? Because I think that's probably a really good place to leave off in talking about going back to older editions. I do want to talk about how Dungeons & Dragons itself has evolved to a degree. Now, we mentioned certain things that have changed, and the fact is, like, saves are vastly different, attack is vastly different, AC has changed. So much has changed in D&D. I mean, if we start at the very basics of talking about how it's evolved, we, of course, had the fact it wasn't until, like, 3rd edition that the rolling of dice got a little more customizable, I think. Like, 1st and 2nd edition were very down the line and seeing what you could qualify for, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I do like that creativity to a degree, because it's sort of like seeing what I could play and then seeing if I could come up with a cool idea for it. You know, that's not a bad thing, but I know how some people, you know, definitely more nowadays are turned off to it. They want to be like, I want to play a fighter, you know, right away, you know. People are like that. So, and then, like, the evolution of races from classes to actual races when it comes to 2nd edition. I think, like, the dual classing and multi-classing rules were ever so complex and unnecessary in 2nd edition. And also the class restrictions just gave me a headache, too. I mean, I understood it, but it's sort of like, okay, so my elf can only play these things if I'm playing an elf. But
yeah, I think a lot of that stuff got homebrewed, though, especially on those restrictions. You know, most of the games that I played and still play will tend to have more liberal rules for rolling stats. So you might see, like, you know, roll 46, you know, take the best 3.
Yeah.
You might see where, you know, you do like a matrix where you roll 3d6 so many times and you take the best rolls that you get out of any particular line, you know, going up or down. You know, so those are the kinds of ways where it would give you the more flexibility to play what you wanted to play. And you would just have to figure out which matrix it was that worked for you. And sometimes that would give you a disadvantage that you maybe necessarily didn't want, but, you know, hey, I actually have a 17 intelligence, and that's going to work for my wizard.
Yeah.
But I have a 6 strength.
I honestly miss rolling for stats instead of just doing a point system.
I mean, there's both.
I know the point system is easier in general, just because then you don't have to sit there and.
I think the point system, I like using it better because if the rolling, there's always that one time that someone gets completely screwed by the die, no matter what you do. You know, it's like all their die rolls are so bad that, you know.
Yeah, but that's part of the fun and part of the chance.
I think that's like. Well, the thing is, like, I personally can work with that, but I've been with players that hurts them and detracts from their ability to play the game. It's to each their own, and that's why I like using the point systems, like the basic standard or the standard array that 5th edition provides you with, because I think it's got it keeps it simple and customizable to a degree, and you're going to have a couple low stats anyway, so.
But it's, you know, the same thing, like, you know, I had a player, I want to say, and he rolled a 1 for hit points at his 2nd level. That was his, you know, he took, you know, we give the max at first, rolls 1 at his 2nd level. And, you know, I still compare his stats to everybody else's. Now he's just been taking the standard because he got so screwed. But still, when I compare him to everybody else, you know, he's still behind on the curve. Just from, you know, one bad roll. So there is something for taking kind of the standard deviations.
Yeah.
One thing that you haven't really touched on, you know, when talking about the evolution of D&D through the editions is, I think, kind of the evolution of the players as well. You know, we've got, you know, a lot more diversity. I actually have, you know, women who play in our game, which was, you know, unheard of. You know, and the players, you know, who are playing now, you know, they have grown up with at least the concepts and the ideas behind D&D being just part of, you know, everyday gaming. You know, you turn on any, you know, arcade console system, and, you know, you're going to have stats and they're going to be applied to something, and, you know, you're going to have strength and you're going to have hit points. And, you know, these kinds of ideas all go back to the first editions of Dungeons and Dragons. And they're just part and parcel for kind of, you know, most, you know, whether it's tabletop or video game type systems. So, people come in understanding the stats a lot more as well.
Yeah. I think that's definitely one of those things. Is the player base has definitely evolved. I do agree on that one. Like, even when I came in, like, I think my initial group was spoiled because we had a couple of girls that were playing with us, or women, I guess now, and they still do play with us. But it's sort of like I could recognize that they were more of like an exception to a lot of the rules, especially when you'd go to like a game store and see who's hanging out there. It's
Right.
it's and I think that's a good thing that we definitely have had the player base change too and expand. Like I think the new popularity is very good for role playing games, and it almost is like there's a lot of different gaming systems coming out. And I think that's like something that when we're talking about like the changes in the player base and stuff, like with Kickstarter and stuff, and like how me and Joe tend to talk on this show about like new games that come out, and we're like, oh, this one is Kickstarted and stuff like that. And it's like, well, because people are out there a lot more, we can get this more variety of stuff, and we're getting more players because people will find more that they like. It's like this cycle that I think I do like, the blooming of tabletop.
Right. And you also there's a lot less there's a lot less need and a lot less acceptance of toxic players at the table as well.
Yes.
Which is really welcoming. Not having to play with Joe Schmo's brother just because he was the only person available is a really welcome change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like an option which I think didn't exist when I started, and it was getting to this point in time where I can recognize that we don't have to play with certain people, that
Yes.
if I don't want to run a game with someone, I can ask them to leave and get someone else. Something like that is something that I'm glad I can do now, but it's also something I have to remember in my head too. It's sort of like, because again, I didn't.
Well, yeah, I could think of one person that we had when we tried to do a game store run game.
Oh.
That we definitely end up having to say, okay, you're no longer playing with us.
I think the thing was, he wanted to play computer games at the same time he played Pathfinder.
Yeah. Well, he was young, and
we understood.
He was what, 13?
Yeah, he was young. Most? We understood why he was doing it. Not good attention span.
But he was just then a distraction for the entire game.
Yeah.
Right.
So, well, I think we didn't ask him to leave. We asked him to either put down the game or leave.
Yeah, and he just left.
Yeah, and he just left.
Well, when we used to, try to scrounge up players, we would go and play in, they had these off rooms in the public library, which is where we would go, which is, you'd get a lot of interesting people who would just be showing up hoping that some D&D game was being played, and a lot of different personalities that didn't always necessarily mesh. But, hey, your mom had dropped you off at the library on Saturday, and this was your one chance to play D&D for the week, so this guy's welcome to come in. And now we can, hook up with people all over the country and play Roll20 if we wanted to.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Roll20 is wonderful. And I think there's also, like, it's interesting because we talk about toxic players, but there's also players that have play styles which I don't think are very compatible to each other, too. And I think recognizing that we can now split her off into groups. Like, someone that wants to be very role-play heavy in their gaming play doesn't need to game with the hack and slash dude as much anymore, because the hack and slash dude who doesn't care about role-playing can find a bunch of other hack and slash dudes to go hang out with and play, We can separate a lot more that, these flavors of play, which were always in existence, can be separated group-wise. You don't have to be, like, forced together with people. And that's also good, too, because, it's more than just the people that are really annoying player. Because the fact is, like, I recognize that I know some people And I know that myself had a level of toxicness to myself too back in my youth. You know, I was pretty bad rules lawyery for a while there, and I knew
Right.
it. You know, I had to learn my lessons and like be like, okay, I gotta step away and stop caring. You know, stop caring, do it. You know, or like getting rid of the level of like power gamers too. You know, you have to like learn to not be that, and you know, and I mean, I guess that's a difference now. I don't know how easy it would be for someone that's got a lot of the more annoying problems in role-playing to correct it as much, you know. It's like we talk about like the real toxic ones, which are like the real just disruptions. They're terrible. They're not really there for fun. You know, those people. That's fine.
Right.
But even like disruptive people that you might want that are still trying to play but end up being disruptive, how much can we have them learn nowadays to not be disruptive with the kind of environment? I don't know. You know, we're not trying to like correct someone's behavior completely, but you want someone to be like, you have to almost learn to that it's fun for everyone. It's cooperative almost. You know, you want it to be fun for the GM/GM. You want it to be fun for you. You want it to be fun for all the other players, and call it a day. You know. But
And you always are going to have people who just want to dick with everyone.
yeah, and I don't mind that if it's not too much. You know, if
Yeah,
doesn't
it has
distract
to
from the
be a
game
balance. If it's something that's constant and that's all they want to ever do,
and it distracts from the game, you know.
yeah,
yes.
then it's no fun for anyone.
Right.
If it's a little interesting things they do quirk wise, you know, almost it ends up being for their characters.
Well, yeah, and that's fine. That's part of, you know, role playing. That's part of a character that, hey, you know, this guy just does this kind of weird thing, but, you know, that's that. But if it's someone who purposely disrupts the party for no real reason and does it all the time,
Yeah.
Like- for Windows for no reason.
Well, that was just he was trying to he came up with an idea, and we had someone that wanted to like do stuff where he jumped through windows to be heroic every time.
Okay.
Yeah. It was
But-
he did unnecessarily. Like when he wanted to jump into a battle, he's like,
But he was also doing it through like random people's windows in the village, just like, oh, there's a window in that building. I'm gonna jump through it and then jump back out into the street. It's like, no, people don't do that. You're gonna get someone's gonna call the guards on you.
Right. Well, you know, I guess you can try to correct it in game by calling the guards on him and have his character have consequences where, you know, he's now in prison and everybody else is off going, you know, getting the gold and saving the princess.
well, I think
you know, you can also try to correct it out of game too.
yeah. Well, I think like that's the thing is you have to figure out when to correct it in and out of game too. Like in-game things are definitely fun, but sometimes you don't want to disrupt the entire game, which can be a challenge. You know, so
Right.
that's why a lot out of game, which I've tried to manage both decently on my end, and I'm gonna say mixed bag for success, but you know it's a learning experience always.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, because I don't want to go too late, and we've been having some great conversations. I think there's always more to talk about when it comes to comparing the editions of Dungeons and Dragons and its evolution. So we might come back to this topic at another day and talk more about things. Maybe we'll discuss AC, Thaco, and saves or something someday, because those are quandaries that we haven't touched on that I think if we start on, we're going to run out of time.
Yeah.
Today.
Yeah. I mean, I find people's loathing of Thaco a bit funny. But you know, like Joe's. But
I don't mind
to me, it was just part of the system. In you know, when I think he probably played it in second edition, where it evolved from. In first edition, you had it, but there was just this whole ridiculous amount of tables that you would have that you would roll against, depending upon what class and what level you were. So it was an improvement, but it was just part of the system. It doesn't really bother me.
Yeah. See, that's for me. It's like I've been always a friend of math, so Thaco is math, and I always enjoyed it.
I will admit I haven't played a lot of original D&D, so I don't remember the fighting system as well.
Yeah.
I did play a decent amount of second edition when I first started, but also some of those games went really, 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 really crazy. Like when our one friend decided to have his little brother take over his game, and we were in a cave, and all of a sudden we, for no reason, were shot out of the cave on top of a giant boomerang. And it was just like, what? I think we would have noticed that we were standing on top of a giant boomerang with some machine attached to it that was about to shoot it out. Not to mention, how are we not flying off this boomerang that just launched under us?
Right.
So I had a lot of weird things that happened in AD&D as well, or second edition as well.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, all right. Why don't we move on, though? We can, again, discuss this at another time. Why don't we talk about the last topic, which I sort of just added in here, which we'll try to keep this one a little brief here. I was saying because, you know, we have seen definitely systems that keep on going and evolve. What about role-playing game systems that you would like to see have a comeback, and maybe even either just like a resurgence of the gaming system, or a new edition of it? You know, if you could recognize that maybe like a new edition might be the better way to go. Joe, do you have any that you could think of off the top of your head?
I don't know if anything has happened with Cyberpunk in a long time, but that was one of my early favorites. It was the first role-playing game I ever did.
That's what I actually figured you would actually say.
You know me too well, sir.
Yeah. You know, I wasn't even thinking along the Cyberpunk route, but I agree. There hasn't been a really good Cyberpunk game. You know, I think, though, when a lot of the Cyberpunk came out, that, you know, we thought we were about to live in this fantastic post-apocalyptic future, and it didn't happen. So we're all just disappointed and don't even want to imagine that future that's not going to happen anymore.
I think that's why Shadowrun sort of succeeded a little bit more, because it went like science fantasy a little bit too.
Right, because it has magic and everything as well.
So then it feels like, rather than like a possible future, it feels like an alternate world, you know? And I think that's, again, why it did a little better than the Cyberpunk role-playing game system, even though they were, like, really cut off the same thing kind of a little bit, you know?
Yeah, cut from the same cloth, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's crossover stuff. They have rules for using Cyberpunk's elements for... my brain just went dead. Shadowrun.
Yes. Mm-hmm. No, I think like Cyberpunk's definitely an interesting one that we haven't seen a lot from in years. I think they tried to put out like a third edition, it looks like, but I never really heard a lot about it. You know.
Yeah. I think it kind of just like slowly died, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, for me, I think the classic RPG that I'd want to play is Gamma World.
Oh, Gamma World.
You know, as being, a child of the 80s and fear of nuclear war, that, gives me a lot of, like, primal fear to live on, as well as, as kind of just this, crazy mutants, mutants and high tech. I think similar, I guess, in some ways to Shadowrun, because the mutants kind of had a pseudo magical type powers. They could shoot, energy beams or heat beams from their eyes, or things like that. I think would be a fun system to see or idea and concept to see modernized.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, like, that's the thing is, I feel like the Gamma World is also, like, is definitely an interesting one to see its own evolution of, and how, like, it's more modern, like, iterations, if you see anything on it, are more based on the D20 system anyway. Which I don't remember if it was the D20 system, because I played
There was a D20 version of Gamma World that came out, as part of the 3.0, 3.5, open gaming license systems.
Because I tried, I think, a little bit of 4th edition, I think it was, back in the day. And I didn't think that was D20 system. Was it? I don't remember. That's been long enough that my brain is forgetting because, you know, thank you, brain. But, oh, no. Okay, yeah. I think, yeah, they've put out a couple D20 system versions of it lately, and that's just... I would like to see some return to classic, I guess, is that one. I agree with that one. That would be cool to return to a little more the classic systems for that one. Because I like also custom dice systems rather than going very standardized. As fun as D20 systems are, I like how, like, when people have, like, a D6 system, or D8, or D4, or, you know, 2D20, you know, something different that makes it feel like the game's different.
Right. I have one other one to throw in here, and that is Paranoia.
Paranoia.
Oh my gosh, you guys have not heard of Paranoia?
No. It sounds
the idea behind Paranoia is that you're a clone, and you basically have 6 clones within your little pod, and you all are basically live in kind of this world, and you're beholden to the computer. The computer is kind of like this 50s Cold War mentality computer, and it's also insane.
Yeah.
The other thing with Paranoia is that your ultimate loyalty is to the computer, and it's a capital offense to be a mutant. Everybody is a mutant. It's a capital offense to be part of a secret faction. Everybody's part of a secret faction. And so you play a lot of this game, trying to accomplish your objectives, which are nebulous, intentionally nebulous, and throwing your fellow players under the bus, either reporting them as mutants or as part of a faction. It's a fun game to play as like a 1 or 2 session game.
Yeah.
Not so much as a campaign because it will create lifelong grudges.
No, I remember this one. I had seen someone play this, and I couldn't think of it. It was like, it sounded so familiar. It does seem like such an interesting one to try out. Yeah. I would love to, definitely.
Yeah, that definitely.
And I wouldn't mind playing the old school version, or I would love to see somebody take a new take on it as well.
It sounds like it looks like, just looking up a little bit, there was a Kickstarted version that just came out, actually.
Really?
Really.
I'll have to look at that.
Yeah, I don't know how it compares to the older editions. It looks like it was released in March, actually. So it just came out this year that they had kickstarted it back in 2014. It took them 3 years. It took them 3 years. Okay. I guess that's one of those, like, slow burners. It took them 3 years to actually get it done. But still. No, that's...
And I just did some research on Cyberpunk. Apparently they are coming out with a new system based in 2077.
Really? So
okay.
They're basically doing a parallel to around the sort of years that Shadowrun is. Because that's
I think the reason they're saying the reason for it is because 2020 is like right around the corner, and that's when it was based.
Oh, that's right.
I'm obviously not going to have the technology by then.
No, that's true. Yeah.
But now they're doing Cyberpunk 2077.
So it looks like there is a little bit of hope for all these games, but I definitely want to see like what this holds for the future, and maybe if it has a resurgence of these, like. Again, it's like when you mentioned Paranoia, I'm like, I've heard of that. Where did I hear of that? And then I had to look it up, and I'm like, oh, I have heard of that, And the same with Gamma World. It's like, it's just a game I recognize, but it's also like, yes, you don't hear people playing it. Cyberpunk, Paranoia. When I kind of came up with this one, there's one that I would say it's still a little more modern. But I love the Besom system. I love the open-ended system, the big eyes, small mouth. Because I guess I'm of that I'm like of that age where I have watched a lot of anime in my time period too. So I mean, I also just liked the open-ended system for building characters too. It's just something I kind of fell in love with a little bit. They have like had nothing since like the end of 2000s or like the early 2000s. You know, that was the last time we really saw anything on it, and I don't know if anybody will like update it, as far as I know. So I would love to see that a little bit more.
And I'm kind of surprised there hasn't been a resurgence, or at least something, you know, that's even more modern and current than that. Just with
it looks like the last
just
time
with how anime is kind of everywhere.
Last time someone put something out was 2007, which is a little later than I thought it was. That's still like 10 years with how anime is, that it's just disappeared. And like it's still a pretty good distance. It's like I'm like, oh, it's only 10 years, but then like I'm thinking about it, like, no, it's a decade. That's still a decade. I still have to recognize that's quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I think that's the one I would point out for me for a system that I'm at least familiar with, that like I've played enough of, that, you know, I would love to have an update of, or at least a resurgence of it. I mean, I'm always fighting a good fight and suggesting it to people, but that's just me. that and Shadowrun, because I love Shadowrun, even though it hurts my soul to run it sometimes. Too many systems sometimes. All right. Why don't we move on though, because I think that was fun. Why don't we talk about stories from the table, so we can sort of try to get to the end of our things here. This is a segment where I like to have it that our guests basically tell us a story from their gaming table. Any kind of tabletop gaming, from board games to collectible card games to, well, role-playing games tends to be the most stories we get, and that's fine by me, because those are classic stories. So, Rob, if you have like a really good story, either funny, awesome kind of thing from a role-playing game that you want to share with us, go ahead.
Oh, boy. Kind of put me on the spot here. So I'm going to actually talk about my first 5th edition campaign player death. Because I actually had a player die, and this was very, very exciting for me. As I said earlier, is that I found it very hard to kill players in 5th edition. They were exploring a lair that they thought a beholder lived in.
Okay.
And they'd found a pool of water, and in the bottom of the pool of water were some gems. The rest of the party wanders off and, goes out, and they're kind of exploring the edge of the cavern, and they're pretty far away. The thief, of course, cannot get his, greedy little mind off of the gems that are at the bottom of this pool of water. And I'm like, okay, well, the one thing that he didn't realize was that the pool of water was 40, 50 feet deep, because it was just so crystal clear. So I said, well, okay, roll an athletics check. And, he rolls a 1. And I'm like, well, that's, not a very auspicious start to your dive into this pool of water. I'm like, okay, well, that's fine. Like, you've kind of have tumbled in very ungraciously. The rest of the party hears you splashing around, but they think you're just going in for the gems. None of them go back to explore. So I'm like, okay, so now, you need to roll again to see, how you're going to, hold your breath and get under there. And he rolls another 1. And at this time, there's also a snake that's in there that has, come and been attracted to his splashing about. And it was just a series of possibly the worst rolls ever. And he sunk at the bottom of it. And at this point, I was finally like, death saves or not, you're at the bottom of a pool of water. You're dead. So I was very... it was a very, they had fought, trolls, they had fought giants, they had fought I can't think of it. It's not a beholder. It's like one of these corrupted creatures that the beholder sends out.
Oh yeah, I can't think of the name either.
So some pretty powerful things, and he ends up getting killed by a snake in a pool of water. So that's kind of my 5th edition death story. It's not particularly funny, but it is a little ironic.
No, that's good. I like that. I think the only 5th edition death I've had, I kind of ended up almost scripting out a little bit more. I had someone go to the gallows, and they were unable to. They had a chance to stop it, and they managed to fail to do so.
No. What about James's one character's death?
Well, he just killed himself.
Yes, he ran into Strahd's arms, basically.
Yeah, curse of Strahd. I'm gonna run into Strahd, embrace him lovingly, and then get vampire bitten. It wasn't quite that well, but All right. So I'm gonna move on to our final segment because that was an awesome story. It's fun to. Character death is always one of those things that we all should recognize and realize happens more often than it does, and some of us don't. Some of us take it too far though too. But so keep it in the middle. Keep it in the middle, folks. That's all I'm gonna say about that.
Yes.
Don't kill everyone, but make sure that if they do die, it can happen.
Kill everyone.
So
filthy hobbitses.
Yes, kill the filthy hobbits. The last question I like to ask, the last thing I want to go to for my topics is gaming sage advice, where, actually the advice question I have for this week, because usually it's I come up with the question, or if chat has a question, or guests, or anything like that, I'm kind of willing to share. But I actually have one this week that we have answered partially already, and I think I kind of want to hit on it a little bit more. If you wanted to play a classic RPG, where would you go for it? You've talked about some of the sources for it, which is very good for things like D&D. I think for myself, if I'm going to give suggestions, which actually worked for me, I wanted to collect all the Spelljammer stuff, because Spelljammer is my favorite of all the AD&D campaign settings. I'm sorry, fantasy adventures in space were my jam. So
your
we won't
Spelljam?
hold it against you.
I know.
Was it your Spelljam, Matt?
It was my Spelljam. It's better than a Space Jam. Oh my god, I went there.
Oh.
You opened it up! And I just went...
Made Michael Jordan find you and beat you up.
Alright, so what was I saying? Yes. I went to eBay for a lot of stuff, and actually role-playing stores sometimes have classic stuff. So, gaming stores. Like, for example, there was a gaming store up in New York that I went to. If you can find, a larger gaming store, it had, a warehouse of classic games that it couldn't share on shelves, and if you wanted something from back there, go ahead and take a look. There was a lot of stuff back there from many years, that they really couldn't put forward shelves, but if you wanted something from the warehouse. And so those are my two places that I have gone to when I'm looking for older stuff, for me personally. Joe, do you have any kind of thing you want to say about this?
I would definitely agree with eBay and sites like that. Also, used bookstores.
Oh, used bookstore might be good too.
You can find some of that stuff at places like that. Unfortunately, back a while back ago, Quakertown Farmers Market, not far from us, had a store that had shelves of original, old role-playing games and stuff too. But that store eventually went away, unfortunately.
Well, I think at least Matt knows is that I sell a lot of old role-playing games on eBay. So I've got 3 giant shelves full of Shadowrun, GURPS, Spelljammer, lots of Spelljammer,
I think there's
Dungeons and Dragons, some Pathfinder, a lot of the White Wolf games. Yeah, definitely eBay is a great resource. One thing I think that you guys should check is compare prices on eBay versus prices on Amazon.
Oh.
There's a lot of bookstores on Amazon that might have old stock that they're just like, hey, this is just some old book I'm selling, versus on eBay where somebody's like, this is a collector's item and it's worth $30 when somebody's on Amazon selling it for $10.
Right.
You also see the flip side where on Amazon, because there's only 3 sellers, everybody's trying to sell it for $400, where on eBay it's $40. But I definitely, I like to check when I'm selling stuff. I like to check what the prices are on Amazon and eBay just to make a sanity check that the people on eBay aren't being crazy ridiculous with their prices.
Yeah.
And then you're looking for old school stuff. One other place that I would check is aceum.com, aceaum.com, and it's basically is like a price list for everything first edition. So, the modules and the books and versus what condition, what they should be going for. I find that their prices are a little low as to what people actually can get in the open market. They're maybe 10 to 20% low, but it's a good gauge just to go and look, hey, I'm trying to fill out, all of my basic set B adventures. How much should I be paying for, the Palace of the Silver Princess?
Yeah.
So it's a good place just to go to make sure you're not paying too much for it.
Cool. No, that sounds like a good place. So if you want to try out classic systems, there's definitely plenty of ways that you can, and that's a good thing to do it. And I think all of us to a degree encourage at least try it out. If you like it, I definitely think it'd be fun, and some of them are so interesting in comparison to the newer editions too. That's one of those things, is the systems have evolved in such interesting ways for a lot of role-playing game systems. And we've only touched on a little bit today, and I think probably in another episode we'll probably have to touch on it more, the evolution of again, D&D and other gaming systems. So, we'll do that again. But I think it was a great show today. I think we're ready to get going. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Of course, thank you to Joe for being here as usual. Thanks, Rob, for joining us this week. It was a great...
Thanks for having me.
Yep. Is there anything you want to promote?
Me?
Yeah, you.
Oh, hey, just follow me on my Twitter. I'm at RPG Cash. And that's the same. You can find me on eBay there as well. My Twitter generally just has stuff talking about 5th edition gaming references, and occasionally a link to the eBay stuff. I usually put up something that I think is like a really good deal. So you'll see like a lot of if I'm putting up deities and demigods that has the Cthulhu mythos in it. I usually sell it for a lot less than what other people do. So if you follow my Twitter, you'll see a link. If you're looking for that one, it'll come up for, $20-30 less than what most other people are trying to sell it for. And those go quick.
Cool. Joe, I guess promotions that you have?
Same as usual. See everyone again here next Saturday. And I believe we are having the game tomorrow.
Yes.
So
I haven't said anything, but yes.
See everyone tomorrow for more Treasure of the Lost Legion.
Cool, you got it correct. As for me, as usual, my normal schedule of videos up on YouTube of pretty much everything tabletop related, a lot of RPGs, some magic stuff, etc., etc. New video coming out, which I'm hoping to have out today, which is the Star Trek customizable card game. I'm going to start talking about that for a little bit. Because
I own that.
I know. Since that's going through my history of collectible card games, so I'm going to talk a little bit about that one. Ooh.
If you need to borrow cards, I can loan them to you.
I own some too because nerd.
Yes, but I'm just saying. I bought the one whole collection from Zach back in the day.
Oh. Mm-hmm. Let's see what else. So Treasure tomorrow, Discussing Tabletop next week, which I think I still have to figure out. I'm not 100% sure if we have one guest, and I have to make sure we have another one, I think. I have to check in with them. So I'll figure that out during the week. Twitch streaming, I will probably have some gaming streams with or without people just randomly throughout the week again. My normal schedule of at least Sunday, Monday, Thursday. After that, I don't know. I'm going to try to come up with an actual schedule for that, people. So if I finish that and figure that out of when I want to stream what, I'll let people know. Because if I have that, then I can start adding in more streaming role-playing games, which I'm hoping to start a few of in the next month. So hopefully in August we'll see a couple new role-playing games start to be streamed on here too. Hurrah!
Woot, woot.
Yep. So I hope everybody has a good day, and I guess me and Joe will see you next week, and Rob, hopefully we can have you on another time. Maybe,
Sounds great.
Maybe that time where we're going to talk about more history of D&D and stuff and evolution of it, we can get you on.
We can argue about THAC0.
Yes. Yes. Since we're sort of like I'm more on your side when it comes to THAC0, we can argue against Joe. All right.
All right.
Okay.
See you guys. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Have a good one.
Bye.